We've gathered a team of leaders at H Hotel Darwin from the Northern Territory's property building and design industry. We've got a range of different people from different backgrounds who have been brought together to judge really what are the top 10 best buildings in the Northern Territory. Our team are guided by three of the NT's most respected architects: Steve Huntingford from Jackman Gooden Architects, Irma Lamaya from Rossi Architects, and the Northern Territory's government architect, Lawrence Neal. This group of industry experts are counting down the Northern Territory's top 10 architectural statements for the year.
It ranges from the tropical north to the arid south and all the way in between.
You've got to look at all the design details and the construction materials used, the innovation, and just apply the same formula across them all.
Project number 10.
Here we have a real home in the jungle. Jo, tell us what you designed for us here.
Steve, this is a granny flat, so it's supporting accommodation for the existing house. And what we were aiming for was resort-style accommodation. We wanted all of the spaces to focus on the pool, to interact with them. We also have the date palm.
Oh, great.
We wanted to keep that and not get too close to it. And the existing house, which is just down the garden path.
So that really dictated where the footprint of the house had to go, or the granny flat extension.
Absolutely. We also had a jungle of a garden to work with, demolish a little bit here and there, but to get that great tropical leafy atmosphere around the pool.
And the idea was to give the owners flexibility in the future.
What we were looking for was extra accommodation that could be spillover when guests are here. It could be separate residence entirely, and potentially a retirement place for the owners.
When they want to downsize.
Exactly, when they want to downsize and maybe one day subdivide.
So as an investment for your client, Jo, you must have been very conscious of the budget.
Absolutely. For example, the structure that we chose is the most cost-effective, simple, strong material. We've chosen rent and blockwork.
So Jo, this is an example of how blockwork can be used successfully in the tropics, provided it's treated and protected properly.
That's right, and that there are lots of big, generous openings that let the breezes through and the light in. What we've got here is the structure doing all the work in a big slab, and then we've got generous openings and really generous overhangs backed up by the greenery of the garden.
And up here, you've got actually created quite a few compact spaces.
Yeah, we were really keen on getting that intimate space where you feel like you're outside even though you're inside, and you've got great breezes and, of course, a view to the pool.
So this is a great example of two separate dwellings coexisting on one residential site. And we need to see more of this in Darwin to try and arrest the spread of urban sprawl. G'day, Ross. Now, Ross has devoted a good part of the last 5 years of your life to this new iconic building, the Charles Darwin Centre. And it's really transformed this corner, hasn't it, Ross?
It has, yes. This project came about as a result of a government tender. They were looking for 9,000 square metres of office space, and the Paspaly company decided that that was a great opportunity to renovate and rebuild on what has been the site of their headquarters for many, many years.
And I understand it's got an international flavour to the design team as well.
The Paspaly company solicited proposals from international architects, and the firm of Pay Cobb Freed was the one who came up with the great suggestions and what have you.
It's a very simple and elegant form for the tower. Would you like to talk a bit about that?
The shape of the tower is in plan. It's a bit like a pearl shell, which is relevant to the Paspaly company and its activities. It also preserves view and wind corridors and what have you through the CBD. So it's a very responsive shape.
As we venture inside, I noticed that the lens shape of the tower is reflected in this very elegant two-storey foyer. And also the local global theme continues in here with designers and finishers. Would you like to run us through some of that?
We've got Australian timber veneers on the walls. We've got Portuguese sandstone on the walls and the floor. We've got Italian marble. We've got United States black granite. We've got the boutique from Paspaly's that has been designed by French architects. Yep. Artwork in the back here that is supporting a national charity. On the right here we've got a commissioned artwork, especially for the building, from an Italian-Russian artist.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's truly a League of Nations effort, isn't it? But in the delivery of the building, I understand it was all done purely local.
Yes, it was. The quality of workmanship that was delivered by the local contractors was appraised by the American architects as being equal to the best they've seen internationally. This is the 20th floor, which is Paspali's office. You can see the quality, including the Turkish marble, is of a similar level to the downstairs. We have Charles Darwin, old and young, as a feature of the foyer.
This is lovely marble, Ross. You could almost call it a Turkish delight.
You could. So Steve, I brought you up here to show you the curtain wall system, which includes very, very heavy mullions designed for the high wind pressures associated with being 80 metres above the ground. Very heavy glass, double glazed, 36 millimetres total thickness, and insulating glass.
So of course, as with all buildings in Darwin, it's designed for cyclonic resistance.
Absolutely.
And the glass is performing very well thermally. There's no heat transferring through there at the moment. So that helps with the energy performance of the building.
It certainly does.
We've got some models here that were presented to the client. For instance, here's a larger scale model of the foyer, showing 5 different options for the flooring down there, and here's the one we ended up with, which demonstrates how almost every tile is individually cut and the level of detail they went to. And here you've got a larger scale model which shows the building in context to its environs. Can you run us through that?
This was the first model that was presented to the Paspali board, and what we can see here is the original Paspali building at the end of the mall, which is down here. And the purpose of the model was to show how that we can take the original building out and substitute the final product. So this was reviewed by the board, and that was the chosen model.
Wow, Ross, is this really the staff room? I was actually going to ask you the question about how this building works for its occupants.
Steve, I know if I had views like that, I wouldn't get a lot of work done, but I'm sure they do.
Oh, I'm sure you're correct. So how does the Charles Darwin Centre push the boundaries? I'm thinking of terms of Darwin's latest architectural iconic statement. With the hand of international architect I.M. Pei, the building sits proudly as a shimmering tower in Darwin's skyline, which is an appropriate symbol for Paspali Pearl's new global headquarters.
We've gathered the cream of the top-end's property building and design industry to count down the Northern Territory's top 10 architectural statements for the year. Heading up the judging is Corinda Gill from Abode New Homes.
Because they are so diverse, when you're trying to measure a tin shed up against a high-rise building, it is quite difficult to give them all a number and set them into the similar criteria. But at the end of the day, you've got to look at all the design details and the construction materials used, the innovation, and just apply the same formula across them all.
The Territory is a different place. It is more relaxed, it is more casual, it works with the seasons, they're different seasons. So we keep coming back to the idea of what is a good building for the place it's in. So much of that is about the climate and the landscape setting that we find the building in. Number 8 was judged a bold statement on Darwin's Esplanade.
I'm here on Darwin's Esplanade to meet the architect of an amazing sky home.
Welcome.
Thanks, Cole. Thanks for having me. For a multi-residential development in Darwin, I'd expect there to be a gate out the front.
Yes, it is quite unique. It's a transition between that beautiful public space that we have out here in the Esplanade and the private residential space behind. So there's this transition. The public are welcome to come into this building site. It's 128 3-bedroom units, including 4 penthouses. It's put together as 4 towers, 2 pair co-joined. Very large units, they're 175 square metres each, plus balconies, so they're quite large units indeed. The arrangement of the buildings, we've afforded a lot of air, a lot of light, a lot of space between the units. Welcome to one of the penthouses. There are a few, and all the other units have a similar sort of view to this, the same sort of standard of quality of construction. Most multi-residential buildings today are more densely put together, whereas these, they afford an air and a light quality, and as you can see, the views are just magnificent.
So, Cole, we're about 20 stories above the ground. It's a bit of a sky home. What cyclonic considerations do you need to implement in the design?
looking at concrete construction on buildings like this, the glazing, all in accordance to the building code. More specific items like the balustrades, as you can see over here, steel going through the concrete and supporting not only the balustrade but the sunscreening below. Then on top of that we've got different materials, perforated aluminium and glass. I think pretty good to look at.
I have a respect for this development because it doesn't over-densify the site, even though you're in the middle of the CBD. It gives back to the community through its connection to the iconic esplanade, and every unit is provided with an abundance of natural light and ventilation.
So I know what you're thinking. An unassuming galvanised tin shed? How did this make it into the year's top 10 architectural statements? Well, I'm about to show you why.
This was a 1942 wartime building, and there were lots of them in this area. The buildings were used for all sorts of things, accommodation, offices, that sort of thing. And then after the war, they became emergency housing. And then after that, in the 60s, this became the local corner store.
So why did you embark on such an ambitious project?
Part of it was we wanted to be able to work and live on the same site. That was a big driving force.
Yep.
But perhaps the bigger one was making an adaptive use of an old building that otherwise would have been bulldozed.
So Dave, explain to me your role in assisting Joe with this project.
I'm a conservation architect, and I was engaged by the NT government to provide conservation advice to Joe and a partner on the reconstruction of the building.
So what were the important aspects that Joe had to consider when restoring this building?
Look, most important was trying to identify what was significant about the building. What were the elements that we really should retain and should keep? And what were those elements that were really past their use-by date that really had to be replaced? The cladding and roofing was really past its use-by date. It was very, very old, rusty. There was little to be gained from trying to conserve that.
Yep.
But the building structure was in reasonable condition. The Sydney Williams hut really is a very fine framed steel structure, and these elements demonstrate that very well. So that was considered very important to conserve.
It was our dream, me and my partner, to turn this building into an architecture studio. So it's a very special project to me.
It's a great result from an environmental point of view as well, because it's so energy efficient because of the insulated panels.
Yes, what we've got is a layer of custom-made corrugated foam in between two layers of heritage galv sheeting. And we've got that on the walls and the roof. So it's enabled us to have a really energy efficient shed.
And the obvious question is, what's it done to your power bills?
They're halved.
That's
so we're
great.
very happy about that.
Brilliant result. This project pays homage to the story of the Sydney Williams hut, prefabricated sheds that were shipped to the top end for wartime. It's a successful project not only because the owners repurposed this rusty old shed as contemporary offices, but also because they maintained an important link to Darwin's past.
Project number 6.
So here I am in Darwin beachside suburb Fannie Bay, and behind these high walls and impressive gate lies one of Darwin's most clever architectural designs. Ali, good morning. Good to see you again.
Good morning, Stavros.
First thing I noticed when I walked through those wonderful gates is that I'm walking up steps to what effectively is ground level.
Yes, it's the key to the site. It's, you know, we plan things in section, and what we needed to do here was to get high enough to get these beautiful views, but with privacy. By placing all the living areas on the ground, we can then put all the sleeping areas upstairs. From the front main bedroom overlooking the water through to the rear bedrooms, we have basically connected our site to the seascape and the landscape at the rear. So ground level living, first level bedrooms, always, always, always connected to landscape.
Normally in a townhouse development, the middle townhouse, or in this case the middle two townhouses, don't get side light. But because you've got that driveway going down, it's allowed you to open up and articulate, which gets natural light to those middle units.
The unexpected bonus. Bedrooms and bathrooms get sea views. Incredible. We were so lucky to achieve it. But more importantly, it's the baseline. Why devote the streetscape to cars? We're sitting in this amazing courtyard. Can you imagine what it would be like having a 6 metre wide double garage here instead? So we've broken the mould, thrown that away and said that there must be a way forward. We've now created indoor and outdoor living. So across the ocean, right through this unit to that backyard, we have integrated with landscape. Architecture equals landscape.
So Harley, everything on this site is so streamlined, isn't it?
Well, you can see it right here. The lines of the architecture have been extended into the landscape. We've got lovely medium-sized trees here. We're edging and creating green walls where we're abutting other properties, and we're creating pergolas for shade in the middle of these courtyards, herbs, gingers, pineapples. We've got it all here, and it's all for external living. We've maximised every square metre of this site. The end of the site was the least attractive part of the site, but we've used every square millimetre. It's a radiating site, and it radiates towards the water. How good is that?
So this development breaks new ground by using such simple devices. By concealing the cars in the sub-basement, this has freed up the entire site envelope above to become a fully integrated environment for living in the tropics.
We've gathered a select group from the Northern Territory's property building and design industry to count down the Territory's top 10 architectural statements for the year.
I hope that we'll get comments on how things work, how people use the building, how they live there, how it responds to the context and environment.
And Alice Springs headquarters was judged number 5.
My first impression of this building, it's a simple design in an industrial setting, but ultimately it's about subtlety, sustainability, staff, and the sun.
We started off from a home office, progressed to a tin shed, and then the opportunity arose where we were able to build this place.
And I can see you really appreciate your staff because you've created this amazingly functional and aesthetic environment for them.
The staff that we have at the moment, they've been with us for a very long time, and each of us have our own little quirks and fun personalities, and we really love getting together and collaborating and throwing around our ideas.
And I notice outside there's so much sun, and I understand you're harnessing that solar energy.
We are. We took the opportunity to install solar on our roof. The whole time we've been here, we haven't had one power bill, and we've been able to give back to the community by putting back into the grid.
So Sue, the sun here can be a real advantage and disadvantage.
Yep, the sun here gives you a huge amount of natural light, which is welcome, but we have to really manage the heat and the glare. So this wall here, for example, is a multi-cell polycarbonate product that allows a beautiful, diffuse and soft natural light to the interior, but it keeps out the heat because it's equivalent of natural glazing.
Okay.
And then another technique we've used on the building is these angled shade fins here. So you can see the particular angle that they're at blocks out the western sun in summer, but allows the western sun in winter.
I understand the client wanted to use aesthetic but cost-effective materials.
They did, and so we tried to use materials that were ordinary and commonly available in Alice Springs. One of the most interesting features we used is on the front facade with the rainwater spouts. The large rectangular steel panels with an X in them are actually air conditioning ducts. Harvesting the rainwater was one of the main design features. We collected the rainwater in a concealed box gutter and directed it to the feature stainless steel rainwater spouts. The water comes in huge jets down into the landscaping here, where it soaks into the ground and feeds the arid zone landscaping, and then the excess water gets carried away. And the staff inside the building get to see these waterfalls happening outside the window.
What I really appreciate about this project is that the builder, as the client, also respects really good architectural design. They've come a long way from their tin shed, and they've been able to construct a building that is not only collaborative, but also respects its location in a really harsh climate.
Today we're headed out to World Heritage listed Kakadu National Park, maybe to wrestle a croc, but definitely to see the Anfinic Resort designed by Tropo Architects and 100% locally owned and operated by the Jabaluku Association. So Phil, Tropo are no strangers to Kakadu, having done the award-winning Bawali Centre with Glenn Merker in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And you've also got a long history on this site, having done the original bungalows in the late 90s. And working in such a pristine environment as Kakadu, does that present you with challenges as well as being a thrill?
Oh, well, it is a thrill, and it's actually about the culture and the people. Sure, it's a fantastic and interesting place, but their stories are embodied in the landscape, and we've been constantly amazed at discovering that and working primarily with the Jabaluku Association.
We're sitting here on one of your suites on the deck and you're reclining gracefully on the daybed.
Well, I was until you woke me up.
Sorry about that. I understand these structures were actually prefabricated in Victoria and basically flat packed and brought up here on a truck and then finished on site.
Yeah, well, the way the system for this building works is we're stitching onto some earlier bungalows which have some good steep tropical roofs. They're too high to transport that way, so the portable finishes at not far above door head height, and then the bathrooms aren't really the normal bathroom. It's the beginnings of a bathroom, and the bush screens and the outdoor shower complete that.
So it's like a kit of parts?
That's right, yeah.
So you work together with local artists and craftsmen in a lot of these finishes and materials, and some of which are recycled.
Yeah, the timbers, all Australian timbers, including some recycled hardwoods and good old cypress pine, which we're sitting on the deck of at the moment.
Yep.
But there's also working in with artists and people on site. Jabaluku have always been fantastic at finding things from the bush. In this case, we extended the repertoire to include disused highway signs. Let's face it, buildings are not really ends in themselves, they're only devices for engaging with the environment.
You've also got these common areas here with the cafe and the facilities. And what we're walking along here is a grand veranda with a raised deck which basically looks over this commons that you've created in the landscape.
A grand veranda of timber and tin.
Yes.
Because there's not really so much about it, it's about what you're looking out at, the great skies with the storms coming, and the bush and the trees that rise above it. And that's actually what it's really about.
It frames the view, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's about looking outward and not being constrained inward.
This project is yet another example of delicate and exquisite Tropo architecture, which pays homage to its environment, and in this case, allows its occupants to enjoy the beauty that is Kakadu. The project also helps to continue and strengthen the ongoing success of the local Jabaluku enterprise.
Next is the judge's pick for number 3.
So here we are in one of Darwin's 3 marina suburbs, about to see a brilliant example of tropical housing which truly embraces the site and the climate. So Harley, this site presented you with some real challenges in terms of its narrowness, the way the site cranks and also falls quite steeply to the marina, which is unusual in Darwin. But with those challenges, of course, come opportunities, which I think you embraced with your client.
Yeah, it was a Darwin thing. We wanted to engage with the landscape. We wanted all the spaces to work with the ground rather than be separated from the ground. So our client wanted to live in the landscape. This was an opportunity to create a pavilion-style architecture that's a little bit of Kyoto, a little bit of Made with Jaya, throw in the Spice Islands, and we can be living on holidays every day here. It's all about the Darwinians. We are good gardeners. We can do wonderful things with landscape. So when you're sitting there in Asia and you see those plants that can be grown in Darwin, you say, why can't I do that? We can do that. Why aren't we doing it?
Harley, when I go out into my garden and grab the shovel, the first thing I do is get tired, and I usually end up on the couch back inside watching the football. Does that make me a bad person?
I've known you for years, Steve, but I know there's scope for you. You will become a better person if you go back into your garden. Well, Steve, here we are at the end of the promenade. As you can see, we have this eyeball onto the marina. This is the end of the procession. We have landscaping on the edges. These casements allow the breezes to come from the southeast trades as well as the northwest monsoons. And we have this void area here which has a thermal chimney. We can actually expel warm air. So you can feel the breeze rushing through here.
You're getting a brilliant breeze through those
And it will go through the whole site.
And it's a wonderful quality of light in this space, Hully. And you can also get a really nice glimpse of the boat that you brought with your fees. As a Darwinian, what really impresses me about this project is that it's a true collaboration between architecture, landscape and art. And it harks back to the days before World War II and Cyclone Tracy, when houses couldn't rely on modern things like air conditioning and they had to work with their environment rather than work against it.
Our select team of property building and design industry leaders are counting down the top 10 architectural statements for the year in the Northern Territory.
Everybody's talked about landscape, materials and designing for the environment because the Northern Territory's got such a diverse environment.
Number 2, and Randal Ashford from Ashford Group was taken by this project's minimalist design.
Cicadas are an excellent example of tourism architecture. You have essentially a pod on your own, which is linked together to all the different facilities that you'd expect in a five-star place, but you're perched away on your own in a secluded villa. They can actually go out into nature and get that real feel, but then they can return back to their comfort of their five-star resort.
I'm more than 300k south of Darwin, near Katherine, and heading into Nitmiluk National Park. As an architect, I'm intrigued to find out about the challenges of designing a lodge out there. So Jenny, we're in a wonderful landscape. How is the design minimising the impact?
It was all about not competing with the escarpment and what's around here, so we're blending in with the bush. So it's an experience of where you are, not what you're in. The materials are prefabricated framing that is brought onto site in bits, so it's all sort of fitted together like a Meccano set.
I can't help but notice that everything's raised.
Yeah, Katherine floods to some degree every year, and we're up above the 100-year flood level.
So being up off the ground, that lets the water run underneath the building?
Yeah, all the water flows across the site in the wet season to the river, so it's all about getting up out of that. This is actually where we wanted to build the lodge, but we weren't allowed to because of this escarpment and the drop-off and the river. We're in a national park. The Darwin people are the people of this area. The lodge is owned by the Darwin Association, and they were the people that were behind the whole project. They run the lodge, they train people through the lodge, they run the visitor centre in the park. They had the idea, they found the funding, and then they came to us and the builder that we used.
From low-lying roofs to woodland colours, it's comfortable accommodation that nestles into a landscape that's culturally significant and ancient. This is architecture that doesn't need to shout out, it creates its own sense of place.
And now, number 1 in the Northern Territory. And for head judge Corinda Gill from Abode New Homes, the Alice Springs Desert House was a deserving winner.
The owner, the architect and the builder should all be extremely proud of themselves. It's an amazing building and it would be a perfect place to call home.
A house should reflect its occupants in their personalities, their intents and their lifestyle. Now, beyond these solid and commanding walls is a story that originates from the other side of the world.
I came to Australia in 1997, quickly found the desert and loved it and stayed ever since.
And Steve, tell us about your lifestyle in this special house.
Well, we're a couple of cyclists, we own 2 dogs, and so when we came to design a house, our brief to the architect was really a house for 2 cyclists, but we also decided it's also a house for their friends and visitors.
So is this your forever home?
Yes, it is. And we have planned the home to function with us in a good way as we get older. And we hope to be here forever, Steve, don't we?
Yeah. And both of us had always wanted to have a house designed for us, an architectural designed masterpiece. And once you've done it, why would you want to move on and live anywhere else?
We've always felt that the house should be very simple and that the colours should really bring the house to life. And the colour palette we've chosen here actually largely reflects the colours in the landscape outside.
We're a house which gets lots of light. It's got great views in every direction, so you actually don't need to have too much in terms of colour within the house, but the colours that we have is all about reflecting the beautiful colours in the environment. In our summertime it can get really hot, so we wanted a house which can adapt. So during the daytime we can shut our windows, we have our external louvers come down, keep the heat out. We've still got our wonderful shady courtyard internal environment, and then as it cools down you open up, you let the evening in, you let the night cool come into the house and it cools it down.
Well, welcome to our outdoor living space.
Oh, I love this courtyard.
It's our dining area, it's our entertaining area, we have parties here, and every aspect of the house looks into this space, which is a beautiful feature for us to enjoy.
To build a house like this in the desert clearly has its challenges. But they've managed to build a house that's robust, energy efficient, and climate considerate. I'm left feeling energised and inspired